Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Clayton with your ARC Insurance Agency, and I'm back with a brand new video. This video, we talk about some of the standard homeowners insurance coverages that you might have or might need to have on your home. Let's get into it. So recently we've been writing a lot of homeowners insurance policies, and so what I want to do is talk about some of the coverages or some of the standard coverages that you might need to have or might have on your current homeowners insurance policy, or to kind of have a better understanding of what these coverages are and what they mean, right? So when you're thinking about homeowners insurance, you can break it up into two sections, right? So the first section is going to be your property coverages, right? Then the next section is going to be your liability coverages, and we'll get into the difference between those two types of coverages, right? So when you think of property coverage, obviously that's going to cover the physical property, right? But there's different coverages within property coverage. All right. So obviously the first one that we have is coverage A, right? And then we have coverage B, coverage C, and coverage D. These are some of the most common coverages that an individual should have or would want to have on their property, right? So coverage A is basically covering things that are attached to the property, right? So that could be like a garage or a chimney, things that are physically attached to the property. Coverage B could be things that are not attached to the property, right? So let's say you might have a shed in the backyard, you might have a detached garage, right? You might have other things like a gazebo, right? That's detached from the property, right? And so those are types of things that would be covered under coverage B. Coverage C coverage basically covers the contents of your home, right? So imagine if I flipped your home upside down, right? And I flipped your home upside down, and anything that fell, right, that would be coverage C. So things like TVs, toys, furniture, anything that's not physically attached to the property, right? And so those are the types of things that would be covered under coverage C of your insurance policy. Coverage D basically covers loss of use, right? So let's say a terrible incident happened at your property. Let's say you might have had a fire, or, a tree might have landed on your property or on your house or something like that, and you cannot use your property, right? Well, coverage D will kick in and basically cover you in the event that you have to, maybe live somewhere else, like a hotel, or maybe had to rent a place, or cover any of those living expenses that you accrued while your property is being repaired. That's where coverage D will kick in. A lot of times people will think, do I or do I not need flood insurance? Well, the way that goes is pretty much, obviously if you live in a flood zone, you would need flood coverage, right? But the thing is that with insurance, if you're in an area that's very, very low risk, you might not want to pay for that, right? Because the odds of that happening are pretty much slim to none. But if you do have flood insurance, obviously that could have a huge effect on the rate that you pay for your insurance, and if you do strongly feel that you do need, flood insurance, what you can do is just add that to your policy, right? Because obviously, global warming is real. Things are changing. So, if you were in an area that maybe wasn't a flood zone and now you are in a flood zone, you might want to, reassess or look at your insurance policy, and, maybe want to add that to your current policy. The other thing, obviously, being in the Washington, D.C. area, there's pockets of our area that flood. So I know obviously like Alexandria has been historically known for flooding because it's really close to the water. Certain areas of D.C., like Southwest D.C., a lot of times floods will happen there because it's very close to the water. But then other areas of the DMV area, have a very, very low risk of flood. So you might not need flood insurance in the area that you live in, if you live in the Washington, D.C. area. But obviously there's other parts of the country that do face flooding. I'm originally from New Orleans, so I know a lot about it. So, obviously flood insurance is you got to have it down there. So, depending on where you live, you just need to assess whether or not you need it or not. All right. So once we got into, so that's all for property coverage. All right. So the next thing is liability coverage, right? And personal liability and medical payments are like the two kind of subcategories under liability coverage, right? So personal liability covers when you are liable for bodily injury or property damage to others, right? So let's say, for instance, someone comes on your property, and you might have had that stair on your deck that has always been a little fidgety, right? And a friend comes over or a family member comes over, and they wind up spraining their ankle and hitting their head and falling down the steps because of that step that you maybe were negligent in repairing, right? Well, basically that would cover your personal liability, or your liability coverage rather, would cover an incident such as that, right? The other thing too as well, it not just covers an incident like that, but also too as well members that live in your family, right? So like, let's say little Johnny was practicing his baseball swing, right, and hit the ball, and it hit a neighbor's house and cracked the window, right? That would be under your liability coverage, right? Your personal liability coverage, right? The other thing that your liability coverage is things like medical payments too. So going back to that situation that I mentioned earlier with that family member coming over and twisting her ankle on that step and hitting her head or whatever, those types of injuries that accrued, the medical payments that accrued, when that individual had that type of injury, the medical payments would be covered under your liability coverage, right? Your liability coverage will cover that individual's payments, the medical bills and all that kind of stuff, so that way they can get back to where they were prior to having that terrible incident, right? And so what I also like to end with too as well, homeowners insurance is not a one size fits all. So it's really important that you try to customize your insurance policy that fits your individual needs. There's some things that your friend might have on his or her insurance policy that you might not need to have, and vice versa, right? So it really just all depends. And so, as I mentioned earlier, just how every house is different, every insurance policy plan needs to be different to fit your family's needs, right? Or your individual needs. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you give us a like, a comment, and definitely subscribe. I have some more content coming, and definitely stay tuned for that. I hope everyone has a great day, and thank you for showing a lot of love and support for your ARC Insurance Agency. Take care. Peace.